What do you do when you get your manufacturing employee culture survey and the results aren't as good as you'd like? I'm Greg Schinkel, President of Unique Training and Development and Frontline Leadership Systems, and let's confront one of the myths with these sort of negative employee survey or culture survey results. We think that employees really are driven by their pay and their benefits, which I'm not denying are important, especially in times of inflation. But the reality is that the studies show that they're not the most important thing. A study by the Society for Human Resource Management, or SHRM, found that 80% of employees say that workplace culture is a crucial factor in their decision to stay in an organization. So we also asked our network on LinkedIn a survey question as to why is it that employees leave the organization? And 2 out of the 4 choices were that, is it pay or is it culture? And the culture respondents were 2 to 1 over the ones who said it was about pay. Now, even though I'm not focused on pay, let's just agree that you need to pay a market price for labor. If you don't, you'll always lose them to someone else who's willing to pay the same or more than you are for that labor. So you need to be at least at the market price. But once you're there, it's really something about culture that will increase the chances of your employees staying in the organization. So whenever someone shares with me that they quit their position and moved on to something else, I always ask them, was there a defining moment when you decided that things weren't working out, that probably your days there were numbered? And many people can think of a specific conversation or meeting or interaction that they had, usually with their manager, that caused them to go, I just don't belong here anymore. So that is really to do with culture, and that culture is to do with leaders. Now, we think that culture is something really big, but think of culture as being the interactions that people have and what they think it takes to fit in, and that needs to fit to them naturally as a human being. So I've got a few tips for how you can deal with the manufacturing employee culture survey that might not have quite the results that you'd like. Tip number 1 is to remember that values drive culture. Now, values, we hear that word thrown around almost to the point where it doesn't mean anything anymore. But just remember, what you value is what you spend time talking about, what you spend time just in your schedule to do. So we can't just put a list of words on the wall and say those are our values. The values is really what people hear that gets measured and talked about and trained on in the organization. And the culture is really an outcrop of those values when they're lived on a day-to-day basis by your leaders. So values drive culture. Secondly is supervisors demonstrate culture. The supervisor has the most interaction with a frontline employee. And so for many employees or team members, it's only their interactions with their supervisor that really tell them what the culture of the business is. So how are your supervisors interacting with your frontline team members? Is that creating the kind of culture that you want? I really believe many organizations would be better off if they simply made a commitment not to allow any team members to work for a leader who treats people with disrespect, treats them poorly, and doesn't really create this kind of positive experience. You're really shooting yourself in the foot as an organization by having leaders who really interact with people in a way that isn't conducive to the culture you're trying to create. And the third and final tip is to focus on positive employee experience. Now, I don't mean experience on someone's resume. I'm talking about the experience an employee has from the day that they're interviewed to the day that they're onboarded and through their first few months of their experience working in your organization. You've probably experienced it yourself that if you're changing jobs, that what you think you were going to walk into is not what the reality was when you actually stepped onto the factory floor. And so we want to actually plot out the employee experience and make sure that we have the right positive emotional touch points with those employees in their first few days and weeks of employment. We know that if we can keep them past the first few weeks or few months, their risk of leaving goes down quite a bit. So, responding to the negative results of a manufacturing employee culture survey, it's not an easy thing to do, but you got to focus on the behaviors of your leaders and the overall culture that your management team is creating, and that's of course where we come in. We do excellent frontline leadership training programs, whether they be on-site, or whether it be through the virtual delivery, through our training studio, or now, of course, through the on-demand program that we offer. And our team is standing by to talk with you about how we can partner up with you on a pilot project initially, and then, of course, expand that to become your partners in performance. Visit us on our website at uniquedevelopment.com, and we'll help you build the leadership team that creates the employee culture survey results that you're looking for.